There is no place for heroism or hope here. Everything is measured in exhaustion, pain, and the obsessive anticipation of the next day, which will be no better, no shorter, and no cleaner than the one before. If you find this story too boring, too filthy, too hopeless, then you're finally starting to understand what real life was like for the millions of people who were simply called black slaves. Welcome to an everyday hell where the worst torture is the routine itself. But before you get comfortable, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now make yourself comfortable. We're about to begin. You wake before the sun even thinks of rising. The world is still black outside, and the only light is the soft sound of others moving in the dark, the creak of straw, and the scrape of feet on rough wooden boards. You listen for a moment, unsure whether you have actually slept or simply drifted in a haze between yesterday's exhaustion and today's dread. There is never enough rest. Never. Your body is always sore, your mind thick and heavy. You rub your eyes, feeling grit and ache, and you know this is how it will always be. Someone grumbles quietly nearby, a voice you recognize, but you do not reply. Words are precious, like clean water or a scrap of bread, and must be saved for when they matter. The air in the cabin is cold, almost wet, and your shirt is thinner than paper. There are holes under the arms and across the chest, but it is all you have. You stretch your legs and wince as cramped muscles protest. It is not the coldest time of the year, but the nights are still sharp, and sleep always makes you colder, never warmer. Your hands search for your shoes beneath the cot, fingers closing around worn leather and broken laces. Each morning, you wonder if these shoes will survive another day. The soles are barely more than the ground itself, and sometimes you think you would be faster barefoot. But the rocks and weeds do not care about such hopes. You force your swollen feet into them, tying the laces with more hope than sense, and stand, blinking away the last fragments of sleep. The others are getting up now, too, each in the same slow, heavy way. Faces you see every day, faces with lines so deep they seem carved by the same hands that split the logs for this place. A few people are young, but most are older than you, or at least they seem to be. Hard to know anyone's true age here. Time moves differently on the plantation. There are no birthdays, no celebrations, only more days, each one a little harder than the last. You feel your stomach growl, a reminder that the hunger you took to bed last night is still here with you, waiting for its morning ritual. No one speaks as you step outside. The dirt is cold and rough beneath your feet, even through the tired shoes. Somewhere, a rooster crows, announcing the day as if it matters to you, as if your life depends on the promise of the sun. You do not answer. The sky is still black, the world still silent, and you walk in line toward the cookhouse with the others, all of you a part of this slow moving river of bodies. You do not think about what you dreamt. You do not remember the dreams anyway, only that sometimes they were kinder than this, and that you never want to wake up, but always must. As you move forward, the promise of the day weighs on your back, heavier than the sack of feed you will soon carry, heavier than the stick you will use to drive the cattle. You cannot say which is heavier, hunger, exhaustion, or the knowledge that tomorrow will be exactly the same as today. Probably all three. You glance back at the cabin before you walk away for good, for another endless day. The boards are cracked, the roof patched with whatever could be found. It is a home because you have nowhere else to go, but you have never called it such. Home is an idea, a memory, not this. Here, you are simply housed, not welcomed. There is a difference, and you feel it with every breath you take. You file into the line, shoulders hunched, head down, looking only at the ground. The day will be long, just as the night was short. You already feel the weight of it pressing into your bones. Someone coughs behind you, harsh and dry, but no one looks back. No one ever looks back. Breakfast, as they call it, is waiting for you and the others in the low, smoky building everyone pretends is a kitchen. You join the line, shuffling closer, each step bringing a whiff of wood ash, wet earth, and the faintest hope of something hot to eat. The cook, a woman as thin as her own ladle, stands behind a battered pot. She does not look up as you approach. Her hands move by memory, ladling the same mush into the same dented tin bowls, day after day. You think she could do it with her eyes closed. Maybe she does. Your turn comes. You hold out your bowl, feeling the rough edge of the metal bite into your palm. She splashes in a scoop of corn mush, gray and sticky, more water than meal. If you are lucky, you spot a tiny lump that might once have been a bean or a hint of salt. Today, you are not lucky. You mutter a thank you, but it disappears into the clatter and shuffling around you. No one is really grateful. Gratitude is a luxury, like real butter or a morning spent lying in bed. You step aside and lean against the wall, back pressed to rough boards, and start to eat. You eat slowly, stretching every mouthful, telling yourself that if you eat it slow enough, it might fool your stomach into thinking there is more. The mush sticks to your teeth, coating your tongue in blandness. Once, years ago, someone said this breakfast was like eating the inside of an old shoe. You laughed then. You do not laugh now. There is a pot of something that might be called coffee. It is thin and bitter, made from burnt corn cobs and whatever roots could be scrounged from the garden after the good harvest was sent up to the big house. You fill your cup halfway, the liquid as dark as night, as flavorless as mud. You sip anyway. The warmth travels through your chest and almost tricks you into feeling alive. Around you, the others eat in silence. Conversation is rare here in the morning. Words are precious, and the silence is not peace, but simply exhaustion. Someone to your left chews noisily, lips smacking, eyes already glazed over with the knowledge of what today will bring. Across from you, A boy barely 10 years old stares at his bowl as if it might disappear, his tiny hands shaking from cold or fear or hunger, maybe all three. No one talks about what happens if you do not eat. No one asks what happened to the old man who stopped coming to breakfast last month. Hunger is always here, a silent shadow that sits next to you and waits for you to finish, then follows you out into the fields. When the meal is over, you lick the bowl clean, scraping with your finger, not out of pride but out of necessity. You cannot afford to waste even a scrap. If you are lucky, you might find a bit of crust stuck to the bottom. If you are very lucky, you might not feel the hunger gnawing at you again until noon. You are rarely that lucky. The cook looks tired, her face a map of lines and old scars, her hands red from steam and scrubbing. She has her own family somewhere, but she does not talk about them. She just keeps ladling, feeding the hungry crowd with the same care she would give to livestock. You suppose there is no difference. To the owner, you and the animals are just mouths to fill, bodies to keep moving. No one says this out loud, but everyone knows. You set your bowl aside and step out into the dawn, the sky still gray and heavy, the ground already cold underfoot. You swallow down the last taste of mush and the bitter remains of your hope. Already your stomach feels empty again, but you ignore it. There is no choice. A bell rings in the yard. 1, 2, 3, slow tolls. The overseer is waiting, his voice already raised, barking orders into the cool air. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve, square your shoulders, and step out to meet the day, the taste of meager breakfast lingering as a promise that things can always, somehow, get worse. Today, like every day, you will walk to the pasture, your hunger growing quieter only because your body is too tired to remember it. You will not think of pancakes or eggs or any of the food you have only heard about in stories. Here, food is something you earn by surviving until the next meal. You wonder sometimes if there will ever be enough. You already know the answer. You have learned not to look the overseer in the eye. When he enters the yard, even the bravest among you shrink a little, shoulders rounding, eyes cast down. He is not a big man, but his voice is louder than thunder. It is not a voice that asks or explains. It is a voice that commands. You hear it long before you see him, barking orders at some unlucky soul about a broken fence or a missing head of cattle, curses tumbling out as easily as breath. The rest of you gather in a crooked line, bowls clutched in calloused hands, feet shuffling on packed dirt. No one speaks. No one dares. Even the air feels heavy, thick with expectation. You wait, knowing that a wrong look or a careless gesture might be noticed. The overseer likes to notice things. Sometimes he notices your mistakes. Sometimes he just notices you. He paces in front of the group, his boots crunching over stones. The dogs slink along at his heels, lean and hungry, their ribs pressing through skin. They are as mean as their master, snapping at hands that get too close. You have scars to prove it. You keep your distance. The overseer stops, eyes moving over the line, counting and recounting as if one of you might have vanished overnight. His gaze settles on you. He points with a crooked finger. You, he says, drawing out the word as if savoring the sound. You're out with the herd today. Watch the new bull. The last one let him wander and paid for it. His lips curl in a half smile that means nothing good. You nod, quick and low, words caught in your throat. You hear me? He snaps. You force out a quiet, "Yes, sir," barely loud enough to be heard. He starts listing the day's work. Take the herd out by the old oak. Keep them off the north slope. Too muddy. Make sure the calves do not stray into the creek. Fix the fence by the south edge if you have time. But if you do not, he will know, and you will answer for it. His words pile up on your back, heavier than any load of wood or sack of feed. Each task is a promise. You will not finish, not well, and certainly not fast enough. The overseer's eyes say as much. He walks down the line, barking other orders. Some are told to mend tools, others to haul water, still others to chop wood or clear stones. It hardly matters. Every job hurts, and every job is endless. When he speaks of the cattle, his voice softens slightly, as if the animals are worth more than you, and, of course, they are. The cattle are profit. You are an expense. You know better than to argue or ask questions. You learned long ago that questions are punished. You once watched a man ask for a day to recover from fever. The overseer laughed and sent him into the swamp to cut reeds. He came back days later, half dead and coughing blood. After that, no one asked for anything. The overseer finishes his speech. The day's work is set. You are told to collect your things. Your stick, your rag of a coat, your pouch of meal. If you are lucky, you will get a swig from the barrel of water before leaving. If not, you will wait until the sun is high and your mouth is as dry as a corn husk. Before you leave, the overseer steps close. His breath is sharp with whiskey. He leans in, voice low. Remember, if anything happens to that new bull, I will make sure you wish it was you that wandered off. He grins, showing yellow teeth, and then moves on, yelling at someone else, finding another soul to torment. You shoulder your things and walk toward the gate, feeling the eyes of the others on your back. Some pity you. Some are glad it is not them. Everyone is just a little afraid. You do not blame them. You are afraid too. You step into the morning, the overseer's voice still echoing in your ears. The day has begun. The list of tasks is endless. You already know you will not finish. You already know it will not matter. The important thing is that you try, or at least look like you are trying. Anything less invites more trouble than you can bear. As you walk away, you hear him shouting after you, reminding you again about the bull, about the fence, about the creek. His words tumble over each other, mixing with the barking of dogs and the shouts of other workers. The sound follows you down the path, a reminder that even out in the fields, you are never really alone. His eyes, his voice, his orders, they are with you everywhere. You grip your stick tighter, feeling the roughness against your skin. Another day, another list of impossible commands. The only certainty is that when the sun goes down, you will be more tired, more sore, and still just as hungry. But at least for a few hours, you will be away from that voice, out among the animals, where no one expects you to talk, and no one cares if you are tired or sad or angry. Out there, you are just a shadow moving through grass, one more nameless soul waiting for night. You move toward the shed, where the tools hang like a collection of broken memories. Each one has a story, but none are happy. The door to the shed leans on its hinges, threatening to collapse at the slightest breeze, but it never does. Like you, it simply endures, creaking under the strain of years and use. The smell inside is a blend of old wood, iron, oil, and the faint, sour trace of sweat. It is not a pleasant place, but it is one you know well. You reach for the long herding stick first. The stick is not really a tool, it is more like an extension of your arm. It was probably straight once, but now it has a gentle curve from too many years of leaning, poking, and beating back stubborn cattle. The top is worn smooth by your grip, while the bottom end is scarred and darkened from mud, dung, and the occasional unlucky snake. You give it a small shake to make sure it is still solid. It is, at least for now. You have seen sticks like this break with a sound like a bone snapping, leaving the unlucky handler scrambling in the grass as the herd scatters. Next comes your ragged coat, the one you keep just for days like this, when the clouds hang heavy and the threat of rain is as constant as the ache in your back. The coat used to be brown, or maybe gray, but now it is just a muddle of stains and patches, the color of wet earth. It is full of holes, especially around the cuffs and shoulders. Someone else wore it first, maybe two or three someone else's, and you can feel where their elbows have worn the fabric thin. You swing it over your shoulders anyway, pulling it tight, pretending it is enough to keep out the morning chill. You glance at your shoes again, hoping they will last another day. They are nothing more than scraps of leather tied together with bits of twine. Sometimes you wrap strips of old cloth around your feet, stuffing them into the holes to keep out the worst of the dirt and pebbles. Today, you find a new hole in the left shoe right at the toe. You sigh and tear a piece from your shirt to stuff inside, knowing it will not help for long. You almost laugh at yourself, a farmer of patches and rags, always repairing, never renewing. You take your small pouch of cornmeal from its hook on the wall. There is not much left inside, but it is all you have. This is your lunch, or what passes for it. A handful of meal, and maybe, if you are lucky, a sliver of salt pork left from yesterday's dinner. You check the pouch and see nothing but meal and dust. You close it quickly. There is no use wishing for more. There is also a battered water flask on a shelf, dented from too many drops, the cork stopper frayed and soft. You shake it, hearing the splash inside, just enough for a few gulps, if you pace yourself. The well is on the far side of the yard, and you know the overseer does not like it when you stop too often for water. He says it makes you lazy. You have learned to drink quickly, in secret, swallowing hard against the dryness in your throat. You scan the walls of the shed for anything else you might need. Sometimes you find little treasures, an extra length of twine, a nail someone dropped, a scrap of canvas just big enough to patch a knee. Today, you find nothing. The others have already been through, taking what they can. You do not blame them. Survival is a competition you never volunteered for. Before you leave, you check the small knife you keep in your pocket. Its blade no longer sharp, but still good for cutting rope or digging a thorn from a cow's hoof. You run your thumb along the dull edge, remembering the time you tried to sharpen it on a flat stone, almost cutting yourself. You laugh quietly at the memory, not because it is funny, but because it is better to laugh than to think too hard about anything. You gather all your things, the stick, the coat, the pouch, the flask, the knife, and step back into the daylight. The sky is brighter now, though the sun is still a weak suggestion behind the clouds. The overseer's voice is fading, lost in the clatter and shouts of the morning, but you know he will find you again soon enough. For now you have your own small world of tools and rags, your own ritual of preparation. The others pass by on their way to the fields, each carrying their own bundle of necessities and hopes. You nod to a few, a silent greeting. There is no time for talk, only the brief comfort of being seen, of knowing you are not alone in your struggle. Some carry shovels, others hoes or buckets. Everyone carries the same look of resignation, the same quiet knowledge that whatever you start with in the morning will not be enough by the time night falls. You take one last look around the shed before closing the door behind you. It is not locked. There is nothing worth stealing here. But it is your habit, part of the dance of the day, a small gesture of control in a life where almost nothing belongs to you. You walk toward the pasture gate, the weight of your tools and your hunger balanced on your shoulders. The grass is wet underfoot, and you can see the cattle milling near the fence, their breath rising in soft clouds. You take a deep breath, the air cold and sharp, and step forward, ready or not. The day has begun, and it will be long. You tell yourself you are prepared, though you know that preparation is just another word for hoping nothing goes too badly wrong. Out here, with your stick and your coat and your battered shoes, you are a shepherd, at least in name. You herd not only cattle, but the tattered pieces of your own endurance, holding yourself together with twine and stubbornness. You try not to think about what the tools really are, not just instruments for herding animals, but the armor you wear against a world that refuses to let you rest. You approach the gate, where the morning gathers into one stubborn, snorting, stamping crowd of animals. The herd knows you, or at least they know what you represent. The stick in your hand, the rough voice, the routine that never changes. Cows, calves, a bull or two, all clumped together, waiting to be let loose onto the wet grass. Their breath clouds in the chill air, nostrils flaring, eyes rolling, tails flicking against flies that have survived the night better than you. The gate itself is barely holding together, lashed with rope and patched with odd bits of plank and wire. You lift the latch, which is just a knot of old leather, and pull the gate wide, trying not to wince at the creak. The animals hesitate, as if they are deciding whether today will be the day they charge and run, and you hold your breath, one hand on the gate, the other gripping your stick. A sharp bark from the overseer. Already he is back, standing at the edge of the yard, arms folded, making it clear that every wasted minute is an offense. He does not have to say anything. His presence is enough. You wave your stick, stamp your feet, and mutter encouragements, as much to yourself as to the herd. Slowly, grudgingly, the animals move forward. The old lead cow lumbers out first, head low, bones showing through hide, each step deliberate and wary. She is smarter than most, or at least more stubborn. You keep one eye on her and another on the bull, new to the herd, not yet broken in, his hide still marked with the scars of his last outburst. He glares at you, wide eyed and unpredictable, but today he follows, perhaps too tired or too cold to cause trouble. You make a mental note. Keep your distance. The calves jostle and trip over each other, legs wobbly, eyes wide with everything that is new and threatening. You remember when you were small, how every day seemed dangerous in a way you could not explain, and you feel a strange kinship with them. The adults nudge the little ones along, sometimes with surprising gentleness, sometimes with a shove. Life on the plantation does not allow much room for gentleness. Once the last cow has passed the gate, you swing it closed with your foot, tying it shut behind you with the same knot as always. The sound is a small comfort, one task done, one thing in its place for now. The herd spreads out, finding patches of green, noses to the ground, tails twitching. You walk behind, prodding stragglers with your stick, murmuring the same words over and over, barely aware you are speaking. The path to the pasture is a muddy rut, cut deep by years of hooves and boots. Each step sinks, sometimes almost to your ankle, but you learn to move light, to keep your weight forward, so you do not lose a shoe in the muck. The animals do not care. Mud is just another part of their world. You envy their indifference. You used to mind the mud, used to curse it for ruining the last bit of good cloth you had, but now you just accept it. Mud is everywhere. It is on your clothes, in your shoes, sometimes in your mouth, when the wind kicks up and carries it into your face. Driving the herd is a test of patience, not strength. If you rush them, they scatter. If you walk too slow, they drift and wander. You must always be just quick enough, just loud enough, never angry, never afraid. The cattle can smell both, and they are not above using your nerves against you. You have learned to hide your feelings, to move steady, to make your voice sound calm even when you are not. Sometimes you think you are more an animal than a man, ruled by instincts, shaped by routine. You count as you walk. One cow, two cows, three, all the way up, never allowed, never losing track. The overseer will check your count, will know if one is missing. You have seen what happens when a cow is lost: a beating, a day without food, more work the next day. You do not plan to make that mistake. By the time you reach the far fence, your legs ache, your back throbs, and your stick is slick with sweat and mud. You pause, let the animals spread out, watch them for signs of trouble. There is always trouble: an animal with a limp, a calf that cannot find its mother, a bull spoiling for a fight. You are ready for all of it, because you must be. No one is coming to help you. You glance back at the house, now just a smear of color on the horizon. The overseer's shape is gone, replaced by the long silence of the field. Out here, you are alone with the animals, the sky, and the endless green. For a moment, it almost feels like freedom. Almost. You do not let yourself believe it. You know better. The field is just another fence, the herd just another task, the stick just another reminder that you are not your own master. Still, you breathe deep, fill your lungs with cold air, and tell yourself that out here, at least, the overseer's voice cannot reach you. The day stretches ahead, a ribbon of mud and grass and tired muscle. You tap the stick against your boot, check the herd one more time, and begin the slow walk that will fill your hours until sunset. There are no surprises, no changes, only the herd, the mud, and the knowledge that tomorrow will bring the same thing again. You wonder sometimes how it would feel to walk through the gate and never come back. You wonder, but you do not let the thought grow. Daydreams are dangerous and there is work to do. You lift your stick, call to the animals, and step forward, one foot in front of the other, through the open gate and into another long, unremarkable day. The herd has settled, each animal lowering its head to graze, tails switching rhythmically, ears flicking away invisible threats. You stand a little apart, arms resting on your stick, eyes sweeping the expanse of land that is your world for the day. The pasture is not beautiful, just a wide, uneven patch of grass, pockmarked with holes, streaked with muddy runnels, and edged by a line of scraggly trees that never seem to grow any taller. Here and there, thistles and burrs reach up like tiny fists, waiting to catch at your clothes or a wandering calf. At first, there is quiet, broken only by the sound of chewing and the soft thud of hooves on the damp ground. The quiet is not peaceful. It is the sort of quiet that presses against your ears and makes your thoughts louder. You can hear the ragged breathing of the old lead cow. You can hear your own stomach grumble, already restless again, already counting the hours until the next mouthful of meal. You shift your weight, feeling the ache in your back, the itch of sweat starting beneath your coat. The sun is not strong, but it is enough to make you uncomfortable and the dampness in the air promises more aches by nightfall. You walk the edge of the herd, moving slow, boots sinking in the soft spots, eyes counting and recounting. It is always the same pattern: walk, count, turn, count again. You have learned not to trust the animals. Cows are like water, always looking for the first crack to slip through, the first chance to run. You talk to them as you pass, sometimes out loud, sometimes just with your eyes, promising pain or praise as needed. They do not answer, but you like to think they understand the tone, if not the words. The hours stretch. Time in the pasture is measured by shadows. You watch the line of sunlight crawl along the ground, shifting from one patch of grass to the next, dragging the day forward, whether you are ready or not. The routine becomes a kind of trance: step, watch, count, turn, repeat. If you let your mind wander too far, you risk losing track of an animal, and that mistake is not one you can afford. Sometimes you sing under your breath, old songs whose words you half remember, melodies twisted by time and distance. The singing helps you keep awake, helps drown out the endless hush of grass tearing, of wind shifting through the trees. Sometimes you count your steps, or the number of flies on your arm, or the clouds drifting above. Anything to keep your mind from folding in on itself. Other times, you let your thoughts slip back to the cabin, to the people left behind for other chores. You wonder if they envy you, out here in the open, away from the immediate reach of the overseer's stick and the relentless barking of orders. You wonder if they know how empty it feels, how lonely. Out here, there is no one to talk to but animals and the buzzing cloud of insects that always seems to find you no matter where you go. The flies are relentless. They crawl over your face, into your eyes, up your sleeves. You wave them away, knowing it is useless. The cattle are worse off, tails swishing, heads jerking, the occasional bellow when a bite lands in just the wrong spot. You feel sorry for them in a way, though you know your suffering will never be weighed against theirs in the owner's mind. You and the animals are measured only by your usefulness and the trouble you cause. Midday creeps up on you, slow and heavy. The sun, weak as it is, still manages to warm the pasture to a sticky, breathless heat. The air hangs, thick and still. Your coat clings to your back, sweat running down your spine, pooling in the small of your back. You wipe your forehead with your sleeve, leaving a smear of dirt behind, and look for a patch of shade, already knowing you will not find any big enough to offer real relief. You consider taking off your coat, but you know better. The thorns and biting insects would find you faster than the sun. You check your pouch and nibble a few grains of cornmeal, dry and tasteless. You chew slowly, letting the grit dissolve on your tongue, pretending it is something better, richer, more filling. Your stomach is not fooled, but for a moment, the ache is duller. You drink a cautious sip from your battered flask, not too much. Water must last until you return, and the well is too far away to risk a second trip. You watch for trouble, always watching. There is always a calf too bold, straying near the far fence. There is always a cow that limps, or an old steer that wants to test your patience and your authority. You use your stick sparingly, more for show than anything else. The cattle are used to you, used to being herded, and most days they obey. But sometimes, for reasons you will never know, one will bolt. You are always ready, always tense, always prepared to run or shout or throw a stone. Sometimes you watch the sky, looking for hawks or buzzards circling overhead. They are a bad sign. Buzzards mean something is dead, maybe one of your herd, maybe something worse. You glance at the far line of trees, where shadows stretch and curl, promising both shelter and danger. You know to stay clear, snakes in the grass, wolves if the season is bad, and sometimes other people, desperate or angry, or just as lost as you. Time passes, the light changes. You pace the same patch of ground until it feels like you have worn a path through the grass. Sometimes you wonder if, after you are gone, the only thing left of you will be the marks your feet have made, a trail no one else will notice, in a field that no one will remember. You count the cattle again, lips moving, numbers turning over in your head like prayer beads. You make sure nothing is missing, no signs of sickness or injury, no holes in the fence, no movement in the shadows. The work is dull, endless, and necessary. You tell yourself it is better than being in the yard under the overseer's eye, better than chopping wood or hauling water, better than being forgotten in the cabins with nothing but your hunger and your fear. You tell yourself these things because if you do not, the silence might swallow you whole. The sun always finds you. Even on days when the clouds hang heavy in the sky, threatening rain or just teasing you with the promise of shade, you can feel its presence, an unblinking, patient eye. At first, the morning chill is almost pleasant, a thin shield that dulls your senses and slows the sweat. But by midday, the sun has crept high enough to burn away whatever coolness the night left behind, and the world around you begins to shimmer, the light bending off puddles and metal and the wet backs of the herd. You look for shade, but the pasture is stingy. The trees at the edge of the field are too far away, and the overseer has warned you more than once about wandering out of sight, about letting the cattle drift toward the woods. The only shelter close by is an old crooked oak that stands near the center of the field, its branches twisted into odd shapes by years of storms and hungry animals stripping its bark. Even this tree is more promise than reality. Its shade is thin, patchy, the leaves sparse. Still, it is better than nothing. You drift toward the oak, careful to keep the cattle in sight, careful not to seem as if you are loafing. You lean against the trunk, rough bark pressing through the threadbare coat, and close your eyes for just a second, letting the coolness seep into your bones. The relief is fleeting. The heat creeps under your coat, slides down your neck, pools behind your knees. You fan your face with your hat, but the air is so still that it feels like waving hot water in front of your nose. The sun does not just burn your skin, it gets inside you, makes your head heavy and your thoughts slow. Your lips are cracked, and when you run your tongue over them, you taste only salt and dust. Sweat beads at your hairline, running in little rivers into your collar, soaking the cotton until it clings to your shoulders like a second sticky skin. The flies are worse now, drawn by the sweat and the sweet smell of cattle, crawling over your face and arms, always out of reach. You try to hide from the sun, but there is nowhere to go. Even the cows seem to suffer, bunching together in the little pools of shade, lowing softly, tongues lolling, sides heaving. The bull finds his own corner, pawing at the dirt until he uncovers a patch of cool earth, then lying down with a grunt and refusing to move. You envy him, his simple needs, his lack of worry for anything beyond the heat and the grass. Your own skin tells the story of days like this, patches of dark and light, blisters that pop and bleed, scars that never seem to fade. Each summer leaves a new mark, each year another layer. You remember the first time you burned, how you tried to hide your blistered arms from the overseer, how you cried at night when the pain made sleep impossible. Now you do not bother. Pain is just another part of the landscape, as constant as the sun itself. Sometimes you wonder if the sun will ever be satisfied, if one day it will finally burn everything to ash, grass, cattle, cabins, even the overseer and the big house. It is a comforting fantasy, and you let yourself drift in it for a few moments, imagining the fields empty and quiet, nothing left but the bones of trees and the ghosts of all the feet that walked here before you. But the sun is not a god that takes revenge or grants wishes. It just burns, and you just endure. You pull the scrap of cloth from your pocket and tie it over your head, tucking the ends behind your ears, anything to keep the sweat from running into your eyes. The cloth smells of old soap and mildew, but it helps a little. You imagine yourself as a king in a far off land, crowned not with gold, but with rags, ruling over a kingdom of flies and mud. You count the hours by the way the shadows shift, the way the cattle move from patch to patch, always searching for the same coolness you crave. You sip water sparingly, feeling each swallow scrape down your dry throat. There is never enough. There is a stream at the far end of the field, but you have been told to stay away, told stories of snakes and quicksand. And besides, the overseer does not like it when you wander. So you ration your water, imagining each drop as a treasure, a secret you keep from the sun. By mid afternoon, your mind is heavy with heat, your thoughts slow and strange. You dream of rain, of cold wind and fat gray clouds rolling across the sky, soaking everything in their path. Sometimes, if you stare at the horizon long enough, you think you see rain coming, but it is always a trick of the light. The real rain comes when you least expect it, and never when you need it most. You watch the cattle droop and you suffer with them, the sun a weight pressing you both into the dirt. The only thing that keeps you moving is habit, the constant, nagging fear that if you stop too long, the overseer will appear, rising from the grass like a specter, shouting your name, calling you lazy, threatening to take your food or your sleep or your skin. The sun is cruel, but it is predictable. The overseer is worse. As the afternoon drags on, you crouch under the tree, stick in hand, eyes never leaving the herd. You are part of the landscape now, a shadow clinging to the thin comfort of shade, sweating, waiting, enduring. You wonder if this is all there will ever be. You do not let yourself hope for anything better. Out here, hope is just another way for the sun to find you. If the sun is your enemy from above, then everything crawling and buzzing and hissing beneath and around you is an enemy from below. There is no truce, not for a moment. Insects and snakes rule the fields and the thickets, and you, armed only with a stick and a ragged coat, are merely an unwelcome intruder, tolerated so long as you keep moving and do not linger where you are not wanted. The flies are always first. They rise up in great clouds from the backs of cattle, from puddles of dung, from the mud where water and rot mix in perfect misery. They cling to your face, crawl into your eyes, settle on your lips, and drink your sweat like it is honey. You swat them away, but your hands are never quick enough, never enough hands. You wave your stick, you cover your mouth, you rub at the itching patches on your neck and wrists. The flies never stop. By noon, you stop swatting, stop fighting, because it is a losing battle. You learn to accept their presence as part of the air you breathe. Next come the mosquitoes, small but insistent. At dusk and dawn, they are a cloud of hunger. You feel their bites before you see them, sharp, hot, and relentless, leaving behind little red welts that swell and throb and itch until you are ready to claw your own skin off. You slap your arms, your neck, your legs, only to find more have landed where the last ones fled. Sometimes you bleed, and the mosquitoes seem to know, flocking to the fresh scent. Gnats drift in endless waves, invisible until you open your mouth to cough or yawn. They dive straight in, choking you, making you gag. They crawl up your nose, get tangled in your eyelashes, lay eggs in the corners of your eyes if you are unlucky enough to fall asleep in their territory. You spit and rub, cursing softly, knowing it will do no good. The cattle suffer more than you do, in a way. Their hides are covered with ticks, fat and glistening, embedded deep in the skin, drawing blood. You pick them off when you can, flinging them into the grass, but for every one you remove, 3 more seem to appear. The animals twitch and stamp, swish their tails, low with frustration. Sometimes they throw themselves against the fence, desperate to scrape the tormentors away. You understand how they feel, but it is the bigger threats that make your heart jump. Out here, in the tangled grass and the ditches, where water stands after rain, snakes make their homes. You learn to watch where you put your feet, to check every rock and hollow log before sitting down. Most of the snakes are harmless, black racers, garter snakes, quick and nervous, fleeing at the first sign of your shadow. But there are others, the ones everyone fears: copperheads, rattlesnakes, water moccasins, names whispered in the cabins at night as warnings and curses. You have seen them more times than you care to remember, coiled and patient in the long grass, tongues flicking, eyes watching. Once you nearly stepped on one, and only the sound of its tail saved you, a dry, rattling warning that froze you in place. Your heart hammered as you watched it slide away, smooth and slow, as if it knew you could not do anything to stop it. You remember the stories: people bitten, the wounds swelling up, turning black, the fever and the pain. Sometimes they die quickly, sometimes they linger for days, and in either way, the overseer says it is your own fault for not looking where you step. Every so often, a calf stumbles onto a nest and comes up limping, the bite already swelling. There is nothing to be done but watch. The animal will die, maybe not right away, but soon enough. The overseer blames you, of course. Everything that goes wrong in the field is your fault. There are spiders, too, big ones and little ones, building webs in the fence rails and the corners of the shed. They bite if you are careless, and the bite burns for days. You check your sleeves before you put your arms through them. You check your boots for scorpions before you put them on. It becomes a habit, like breathing, like counting the herd, like waking each day with a sigh. You look at your arms and legs, at the bites and scratches and little scars. Some are old and faded, others new and angry. You remember which marks are from insects, which from thorns, which from the overseer's switch. Out here, the difference hardly matters. Pain is pain. By afternoon, you are crawling with irritation. Every itch is a distraction, every sting a reminder that the world itself is against you. You wonder if the overseer ever feels these things up at the big house, or if his skin is somehow different, immune to the small miseries that make up your days. You doubt it. You imagine him swatting at a single fly and complaining for an hour while you learn to ignore 100. You sit for a moment on a fallen log, keeping your stick close. The herd is restless, flicking their ears, stamping their feet. You wonder if they know about the snakes, if they sense danger in a way you cannot. Sometimes the old cow will stop and refuse to move, staring into the grass. You have learned to trust her instincts. If she says there is a snake nearby, you believe her. You remind yourself to check your boots again before you head home, just in case. You do not want a surprise waiting for you at the end of the day. You do not want to limp into the cabin, feverish and swollen, unable to work, knowing that no one will help you, that your absence will be counted against you, that pain is not an excuse. You swat a mosquito, scratch at a bite, wipe sweat from your brow. You watch the grass for movement, listen for the telltale rattle, the rustle of scales, the whine of wings. This is your world: sun above, bugs and snakes below, cattle wandering somewhere in between, and you, caught in the middle, always on guard, always braced for the next small attack. There is no victory in this fight, only survival. You endure because you have no choice. You brush away the insects. You watch your step. You count the hours until sunset, knowing that tomorrow it will start again. Some days, it is not the animals or the overseer or the insects that wear you down the most. Some days, it is the slow, endless work of fighting against the world itself as it crumbles around you. The herding pen is proof of that. A crooked patchwork corral built long before you arrived, and by the look of it, never truly finished. Every week, sometimes every day, there is another gap to patch, another board to prop up, another splinter to pull from your skin. It starts with a simple walk along the fence, stick in hand, counting not just the cattle, but the holes they might slip through if you are not careful. You crouch in the mud, peering at the rotted posts, the sagging rails held together by nails so rusty they leave a brown stain on your fingers. A section by the north corner leans out, the wire peeling away, as if the fence itself is tired of holding back what does not want to be pinned. You know this fence almost as well as you know your own hands. Every scar on the wood matches a scar on your body. The place where the big bull crashed through last spring when thunder spooked him and he barreled straight at the weakest spot. The gate that always jams if you do not lift it just right. The pile of stones someone once tried to use as a barrier, now sunken and half swallowed by grass. You wonder sometimes why the owners do not just build it properly, but you already know the answer. It is cheaper to let you patch it with scraps than to buy new wood. You start with what you have: a bucket of bent nails, a short handled hammer, a coil of twine that used to be a rope, and whatever boards you can scavenge from the edge of the field. Some are too short, some too warped, but you cannot be choosy. You wedge a board into a gap, pound in 2 nails, then tie the ends with twine for good measure. The hammer vibrates in your hand, and you try not to think about the last time it slipped and caught your thumb. You still have the black mark to prove it. Each repair is temporary, a bandage on a wound that never heals. By the time you finish one corner, another is starting to come loose. You do not work fast because you know the overseer likes to watch you sweat, but you do not dare work too slow either. He might accuse you of idling, or worse, of trying to sabotage the pen so the cattle escape and you can blame the fence instead of your own laziness. You find yourself trapped between too much effort and not enough, between praise that never comes and punishment that always does. While you work, the animals watch you, curious and wary. The calves nibble at the new boards, testing them with their teeth as if they know how weak they are. The older cows wander closer, their shadows falling over your hands as you drive another nail. Once, the bull comes too near, snorting and stamping, and you freeze, heart hammering, until he loses interest and moves on. Even the animals know the fence is not a real barrier, just a suggestion, a line drawn in the mud. Sometimes, while you are digging a post deeper into the ground, you find old iron, maybe a bit of chain, a broken tool, a nail bent into an odd shape. You pocket these things without thinking, tiny treasures that might come in handy later. A bit of wire, a flat stone, a piece of glass. These are the riches of your kingdom, more useful than money, more precious than anything the big house owns. You tuck them into your coat, feeling the weight like a secret. Repairing the pen is dirty work. The mud sucks at your knees, stains your sleeves, seeps through every hole in your shoes. Your hands are covered in splinters, your fingers swollen and sore from gripping the hammer and tying knots. Sometimes you stop and suck a bit of blood from your thumb, wincing at the taste of iron and dirt. You tell yourself you are lucky, that it could be worse, that at least you are not inside shoveling out the stables or chopping wood in the sun. You do not believe it, but you say it anyway. There is a certain satisfaction in fixing something, even when you know it will not last. For a few moments, you can pretend that you are making things better, that your effort matters. You step back and look at the fence, at the patchwork of new and old wood, the knots of twine and crooked nails. It is ugly, but it will hold, at least until the next rainstorm, the next wild animal, the next day when the world tries to tear itself apart. When the overseer comes to check your work, he does not thank you. He does not even look at the fence. He just counts the cattle, grumbles about the mud, and warns you not to let anything escape. If something does, it will be your fault, no matter how well you patched and hammered and tied. You nod, silent as always, and watch him walk away, his boots leaving cleaner prints than yours ever will. You gather your tools and stand for a moment, back aching, hands raw, sweat drying on your neck. The fence is still standing, and that is enough for today. You move on, knowing tomorrow it will sag again, that every day is just another round in a fight you can never win. Still, you pick up the hammer, the bucket, the scraps, and start again because there is nothing else to do. You are a mender of fences, a patcher of holes, a caretaker of things that are meant to break. You wonder sometimes who will repair you when you finally fall apart. Lunch is a word that sounds almost comical out here. If you have not lost your sense of humor, you might laugh, but even laughter seems like something reserved for another life. What you have is a handful of meal in a pouch, a ragged piece of bread if you are lucky, and a sliver of dried pork that tastes mostly of salt and old smoke. You do not eat at noon, not by any clock, but at the first moment when the cattle seem calm and the sun has climbed as high as it will go. You pick a spot under the thin shade of a battered tree or beside a stone that is not too hot. There, you crouch or sit on your heels, always alert, always half watching the herd, the fence, the sky. It is not rest, not really, just a change of posture, a brief pause in the endless walking and fixing and swatting. You untie the pouch with fingers stiff and dirty, pour the meal into your palm, and lick at it slowly, savoring what little taste there is. Cornmeal grits between your teeth, sticking to your gums, dry as sand, but you chew it with care, trying to fool your body into feeling full. Sometimes you get a wild onion or a few sour berries found along the edge of the field. You chew these like they are treasures, little bursts of sharpness that cut through the dullness of meal and bread. If you are lucky, someone from another field will pass by and slip you a piece of sweet potato, a dried apple, even a crust of biscuit. It does not happen often, but when it does, you remember it for days. You sip from your battered flask, counting every swallow. The water is never cold, sometimes cloudy, with a taste of metal and earth. You hold each mouthful before swallowing, imagining it is clear and cool, fresh from a deep spring, instead of drawn from the same tired well as yesterday and the day before. As you eat, you dream because there is nothing else to do. The sun is too high, the flies too persistent, the cattle too lazy to wander far. So you close your eyes just a bit, not enough to miss trouble, but enough to let your mind drift away from the fence and the field. You dream with your eyes open, seeing other places, other meals. You remember or imagine tables piled with food, thick slices of ham, fresh bread, greens slicked with fat, sweet cakes you have never tasted but only heard described by those who worked in the big house. Sometimes you picture a feast so bright, so rich, you feel almost angry to wake and find only dust and crumbs in your hand. In your dreams, your stomach is full and your limbs are light. You can sleep as long as you wish, wake when you choose, eat when you are hungry, and laugh without fear. Sometimes the dreams are not about food at all, but about places, quiet woods where no one shouts, rivers that run cool and clean, cabins that are homes, not cages. You imagine yourself walking away from the pasture, through the gap in the fence, into the trees. You do not think about what would happen next, because you know all too well what happens to those who are caught. Still, you let yourself drift, because a day without dreams is longer than a day without lunch. You keep these dreams to yourself, out loud. You say nothing, not even when someone else passes by, their own pouch clutched tight, their eyes glazed with the same mixture of hunger and hope. Sometimes you catch their gaze and see your own thoughts mirrored there, everyone dreaming, everyone pretending, everyone surviving on less than they deserve. There are days when the dreams feel dangerous, like a fever that will not break. Days when you almost taste the sweetness of stolen fruit, almost feel the weight of sleep in a soft bed. On those days, you bite your tongue, eat your meal, and turn your face to the sun, letting its heat burn the dreams away. The cattle do not dream. They eat and rest, move and bellow, their days a cycle of hunger and relief, fear and calm. You envy their simplicity, even as you pity their helplessness. You wonder if they know what waits for them at the end of the season, if they sense it coming as you sense the approach of the overseer's anger or the arrival of rain. When you finish eating, you shake the last crumbs from your palm, brush the dirt from your hands, and stand. The ache in your legs is sharper now, your stomach never quite satisfied. But the moment of dreaming lingers, a thin thread of hope that you cannot quite let go, no matter how many days you spend in this field. You take a final drink, check the herd, and step back into the sun, your dreams trailing behind you, as light and fragile as spider silk. You tell yourself you will dream again tomorrow because there is nothing else they can take from you, not truly. In the pasture, even a moment of dreaming is a victory. It is a rule of the fields that something always goes astray. It might be a calf too young to know any better, a stubborn old cow that smells greener grass beyond the fence, or even a bull testing the limits of your patience and your authority. It might just be bad luck. The wind shifts, the herd bunches up or breaks apart, and suddenly you are missing one, and the only thing certain is that the blame will land on your shoulders when the count comes due. You watch for the signs. A patch of trampled grass near the trees, a flicker of movement just out of the corner of your eye, a gap in the herd that was not there a moment before. Sometimes it is nothing more than a feeling, a prickling at the back of your neck, a tension in the air. You count again and again, lips moving, the numbers as familiar as prayers: 32, 33, 31. Always hoping the missing animal is only hidden by the others, that it will appear if you wait just one more breath. But it never does. You sigh, shift your weight, and ready yourself for the search. You know these fields better than your own dreams. Every hollow, every patch of thorn bush, every trickle of water running down to the muddy creek. You know where a frightened calf might hide, where a wandering cow might push through a weak spot in the fence, and where you might find nothing at all except a new bruise or a fresh scratch to show for your trouble. You start with the low places, the hollows that fill with shadow even at midday. You push through the tall grass, the brambles catching at your coat, your boots sinking in mud that never seems to dry. Sometimes you mutter curses under your breath, though there is no one to hear you but the birds and the insects. If you are lucky, you spot a flash of white, an ear twitching, a tail swishing, or hear the muffled bellow of a lost animal calling for the herd. Other times, the silence is absolute, broken only by your own heartbeat, loud and slow in your ears. You think about how easy it would be to keep walking, to disappear yourself, to let the field swallow you up and never come back. But you know better. You have seen what happens to those who try. The woods are not freedom. They are another kind of trap, full of dangers you cannot see, hunger you cannot satisfy, and the ever-present fear of being hunted, not just by animals, but by men. If you find the stray, it is never easy to bring it back. Calves bolt and bawl, their eyes wild with fear, legs tangled in bramble or sunk in mud. You speak softly, crouching low, reaching out with slow, careful hands. Sometimes it works, and the calf follows, stumbling and snuffling, back to the safety of the herd. Other times you must chase, using your stick not to strike, but to guide and prod, each step a battle of wills between you and a creature too young to know you are trying to help. The older cattle are worse. A stubborn cow will dig in her heels, glare at you with dark, unfriendly eyes and refuse to budge no matter how you coax or threaten. Sometimes, all you can do is wait her out, standing in the sun, sweat trickling down your back, hunger gnawing at your belly. You talk to her in the same voice you use for the fence and the sky and the tired earth, half comfort, half complaint, all resignation. You wonder if she understands, if she sees in you the same weary refusal to be moved that you see in her. And then there are the times when you do not find them. The animal is gone, vanished into the trees or the tall grass, lost to the world. You search until your legs ache and your throat is dry, until the sun dips low and the shadows stretch long, until you are forced to give up and trudge back to the herd, empty handed and full of dread, because that is when the real trouble begins. The overseer does not care for stories about thick brush or hidden ditches, about wild dogs or sudden storms. He cares only for numbers, and when the count does not match, the questions start. Where did you lose it? How long were you gone? Why did you not watch more closely? Each answer you give sounds like an excuse, and each excuse earns you another punishment: extra work, less food, a cuff to the ear, or a stinging lash across your back. So you learn to be clever, to cover your tracks. If the missing animal is small, you try to keep the herd moving, hoping no one will notice. If it is big, you pray someone else will draw the overseer's attention, even for a moment. You look for ways to mend the fence faster, to block the gaps with rocks or fallen branches, to make it seem as if the world is not always trying to unravel your careful work. Sometimes you find a stray right at sunset, just before the sky turns red and the field glows with the promise of night. Those are the good days, the rare days, when you drive the animal back to the herd, feeling almost triumphant, almost grateful, as if the universe has given you one small, undeserved favor. The animal rejoins the others, head down, tail swishing, as if nothing happened, as if your worry and sweat and fear were for nothing. But most days, it is just more work, more walking, more counting and searching and hoping. You become an expert at tracking hoof prints in mud, at reading the broken twigs and bent grass that mark a cow's passing. You learn to listen for the distant sound of hooves, for the rustle of bodies moving through underbrush, for the sigh of wind that might just be a lost animal calling you home. When you finally gather the herd and make your way back to the pen, you are more tired than you thought possible, more sore and hungry and hollowed out. But the relief of having them all, of having escaped the overseer's wrath for one more day, is enough to keep you moving. You know tomorrow it will start all over again. You close the gate, count the heads one last time, and lean against the rough wood, eyes closed, breathing hard. Somewhere out there, something is always going astray. You too, but you have learned to find your way back, at least for now. The pasture is wide, but you are not the only one who roams it. Across the rolling, uneven land, beyond the sagging fences and rutted tracks, there are other figures moving among their own herds, shadows with sticks and patched coats, as worn and wary as you. Sometimes you do not see them for days, hidden by distance, trees, or the slow tide of the cattle, but eventually your paths cross, as they must. Out here, isolation is never complete. At first, you are cautious, habit more than fear. You keep to your side of the pasture, casting only brief glances, watching the other shepherds as they watch you. You know some by name: Caleb from the southern field, with the limp and the broad scarred hands; little Esther, not more than a child, her voice bright and sharp as flint; Solomon, old and silent, who seems to melt into the shadows and only ever nods in greeting. Others are strangers, traded from distant plantations, their faces set in lines of suspicion or exhaustion. There is a language between you all, a kind of silent code shaped by work and worry and the ever present threat of being overheard. You nod in passing, eyes meeting for a moment before dropping away. If you're feeling bold, you trade a word or two. How's the bull or fence holding up? Nothing that could be mistaken for gossip, nothing that would bring the overseer down on your backs. But sometimes the need for company outweighs the risk. On those days, when the cattle are calm and the overseers distracted, you drift closer to each other. You keep your voices low, glancing over your shoulders, always aware of how easily a secret can be betrayed. You trade news: whose herd lost a calf, who was limping after a bite, who got sent to the big house or vanished in the night. You talk about the weather, the state of the grass, the coming of storms. These are safe topics, shields for the things you dare not say out loud. But beneath the surface, the real conversation happens in gestures, in looks, in the careful way you ask and answer. A mention of someone getting away is never just about a cow slipping the fence. Heard he made for the river, someone says, and the others nod, understanding the risk and the hope tangled up in that simple phrase. Sometimes the talk grows darker, rumors of punishment, of beatings or worse, news that travels faster than the overseer's whip. There are moments when, for a few precious minutes, you almost forget who you are, what you are. You laugh at a joke, share a scrap of food, swap stories of foolish animals and stubborn overseers. Esther can make you smile just by sticking her tongue out behind a bull's back. Caleb once made a whistle from a hollow reed and played a tune so mournful that the cows seemed to listen. Even Solomon, silent as he is, will pass you a bit of tobacco or a stone with a hole in it, a small charm against bad luck. But these moments are fragile. You never gather in groups for long. Eyes are always watching, some human, some not. There is always the risk of being accused of plotting, of idling, of letting your work slip. The overseers know that when people talk, plans are born. They know that friendship, even the faintest spark of it, can be dangerous. Sometimes, though, danger finds you anyway. There are those among the shepherds who have given up on trust. They keep to themselves, eyes hard, words clipped or absent. You do not blame them. You have all seen what happens When someone talks too much or to the wrong person, how the price of a rumor is paid in blood or bread or sleep. Betrayal is another shadow that moves among you, just as real as hunger or cold. Still, you cling to these meetings. Out here, far from the cabins and the overseers, under the vast, uncaring sky, a little kindness feels like rebellion. You trade advice, how to drive a stubborn steer, how to dress a festering wound, how to patch a fence with nothing but wire and hope. You talk sometimes about dreams. Someone whispers about freedom, about the places where people run and are not caught. No one ever says too much. The silence after such talk is heavy, as if the air itself is listening. You notice over time how everyone carries something: an amulet, a lucky pebble, a folded scrap of paper with a hymn or a drawing or just a word written on it. You start to understand why. When nothing is yours, when every day is a march through hunger and exhaustion, even the smallest token can anchor you to yourself, remind you that you are more than what the overseers see. Your conversations are interrupted by the work. A cow bolts, a bull bellows, a cloud of flies descends. Each of you slips back into your routine, your private sphere of labor and vigilance. But the memory of those shared moments lingers, a thin thread of connection that carries you through the worst hours of the day. When you return to your side of the field, to your herd, you feel a little less alone. The overseers have their power, the sun its fury, the insects their endless hunger. But you have seen, in another's eyes, the reflection of your own stubborn will to endure, for now that is enough. The sun's arc starts to droop, drawing out the shadows until even the cows seem taller, stranger, blurred at the edges, like dreams you cannot quite remember. The long hours have dragged behind you like a broken chain. Your legs ache, your arms are heavy, your eyes feel as though they have been scoured by sand and wind. The cattle grow restless, sensing the change. They are creatures of habit, and like you, they know that the day is nearly done, but not quite. Not yet. Now comes the hardest part of the day, waiting for the evening check. You are tethered to this spot, the pasture suddenly feeling like both haven and prison. Too soon to bring the herd in, too late to start anything new. You cannot sit, not properly, lest you seem lazy should the overseer appear without warning. You cannot walk far, or the herd might drift, and you would pay for every stray hoofprint in mud or lost animal at the gate. So you pace, small, pointless circles, boot soles cutting new paths beside old ones. Your stick rests across your shoulders, arms draped over it as if it is a yoke, which in a way it is. You glance at the sun, willing it to move faster, but it lingers just out of reach. Time, in this hour, is elastic, stretching and sagging, refusing to snap forward. You count the cows again, then again, knowing full well that nothing has changed since the last time. The herd clusters in the golden light, the old led cow lowing softly, calves nosing at their mothers, the bull snorting once, then settling in a patch of grass as if to say he is finished for the day, and nothing you do will convince him otherwise. You envy him his certainty. You look at the other animals, see their patience, their dumb indifference to everything except grass, water, and sleep. If only your worries could be so simple. Waiting for the evening check is a skill you have honed. You learn how to look busy without moving much, how to appear alert without burning through what little energy you have left. You prod at the dirt with your stick, fix a bit of fence that does not really need fixing, untie and retie the same knot at the gate, as if the whole world depends on your diligence. You think, if someone wrote your life down, this hour would be nothing but a list of all the ways a person can look occupied while standing perfectly still. It is during this time that your mind wanders, whether you want it to or not. You remember things you have tried to forget, faces, voices, moments that felt like they might have mattered. You try to push them away with the monotony of the task, but some memories are stubborn. You remember being a child, before the fields, before the stick and the cattle and the never ending work. You remember your mother's hands, strong and gentle, how she braided your hair and sang to you at night. You remember laughter, not the sharp, bitter kind that escapes when things are at their worst, but the sweet, careless laughter that you have not heard in so long you wonder if you invented it. You do not dwell on these memories for long. Out here, even your own thoughts can feel like a risk. Too much longing, too much hope, and the disappointment settles in your chest like a stone. You shake your head, focus on the present, the herd, the sun, the coming check. You listen for the telltale sounds, the distant shouts, the barking dogs, the bell that sometimes rings at the big house, calling everyone to account. You are not alone in your waiting. Across the pasture, you catch glimpses of other shepherds, each locked in the same slow motion struggle with time. Sometimes you wave, sometimes you just nod. There is comfort in knowing you are not the only one trapped in this holding pattern, counting minutes like grains of sand slipping through cracked fingers. At last, you spot the overseer's silhouette against the sky, moving toward you with the measured stride of a man who never hurries. His presence stirs the cattle. They bunch closer, heads lifting, ears twitching. You feel your own back straighten, your heart beat a little faster, the way it always does when judgment is near. He checks the herd with a practiced eye, barely glancing at you unless something is wrong. Sometimes he counts aloud, sometimes he just nods, marking down numbers on a scrap of paper that you will never see. If a cow is missing or a calf limping, the questions come sharp and quick, as if every misfortune is your invention, a personal insult to the order of the universe. If everything is in its place, if the numbers line up, the overseer leaves with only a grunt or a careless word. Sometimes you think the worst thing is when he does not speak at all, when you are left standing in silence, wondering if you have escaped punishment or simply postponed it. With the check done, you are finally free to move the herd back toward the pen. The waiting is over. replaced by the brief rush of purpose, the knowledge that for one more day you have done what was asked, no more and no less. You sigh, roll your shoulders, and begin the slow, steady march home, the last light spilling behind you, the promise of rest ahead, however brief or bitter. At last, the moment comes. You are given the signal, a gesture or a word, or sometimes nothing at all but the heavy silence of expectation. The sun hangs low now, bleeding red and gold across the pasture, and the cattle begin to drift together, restless and ready. They know the pattern, just as you do. It is the one part of the day that feels like closure, though not the kind that brings comfort. You lift your stick and give a practiced shout, half command, half plea. The old lead cow moves first, hooves dragging through the grass, head swinging side to side as if she resents every step. The others fall in behind her, calves wobbling at their mother's flanks, bull trailing at the rear, with the weary dignity of someone who has seen it all and found none of it worth hurrying for. Driving the herd home is a slow negotiation. Some animals cooperate, plodding along the familiar path, while others resist, breaking away to snatch a last mouthful of grass, lingering as if the journey back is a punishment. You call, clap your hands, wave your stick, and walk in broad arcs to keep them from straying. At the edge of the pasture, you pause to count again. 1, 2, 3, all the way up, checking tails and horns, wary for the empty space that spells disaster. The ground is uneven, muddy in places where water still pools from last week's rain. Every rut and stone is a trap for tired feet, yours and the cattle's. You walk with the careful gait of someone who has learned not to trust the earth, who knows that even at the end of the day, there is always another stumble, another twisted ankle, another reason for the overseer to shake his head and grumble about useless hands. Along the way, you keep one eye on the fence and the other on the shadows. Evening brings its own hazards. Snakes stir from their hiding places, the flies thicken into swarms, and sometimes a stray dog slinks along the edge of the herd, bold with hunger. You shout and brandish your stick, driving it off, knowing that if a calf disappears, the blame will land squarely at your door. The animals are not eager to return to the pen. They bunch up at the gate, crowding and jostling, pushing against the rough wood as if hoping to find some other way home. The gate itself sags on its hinges, and you must coax, shove, or even pull to get the stubbornest cows through. The bull lingers outside the pen, tail twitching, looking at you as if he's weighing his chances for escape. You fix him with your best glare and wait. Eventually, he sighs, a sound so human you almost laugh, and steps through, accepting the inevitable with more grace than most men you have known. With the last animal inside, you swing the gate shut, fumbling with the knot, hands clumsy from fatigue and the cold creeping in now that the sun is gone. You count one last time, moving from head to head, lips moving in silent calculation. If the numbers add up, you exhale slowly, the tension in your shoulders easing by a fraction. If not, well, you are already rehearsing your explanation, already bracing for the overseer's questions, already inventing new ways to say, I am sorry, without ever being forgiven. The pen is not a place of comfort. It is cramped, muddy, and reeks of dung and sour hay. The cattle know what is coming. Some will get fed, others not. Some will be prodded, examined, or even taken away. You know better than to linger. You set about the tasks that come next, checking the latches, topping up the trough with water if there is any left in the barrel, tossing a few handfuls of feed to the smallest calves. Your movements are mechanical, practiced, already slipping into the rhythm of exhaustion. The other shepherds return in ones and twos, their faces etched with the same fatigue, the same cautious relief. You exchange brief glances, silent nods. No one talks about the day unless there is trouble, and trouble is never far away. Sometimes a cow limps badly, or a calf comes up bleeding from a hidden wound. Sometimes an animal simply will not rise, lying in the mud with eyes half closed, breathing shallow. You do what you can, bandage, soothe, hope, but you know that mercy is not your job. That decision belongs to someone else. Once the animals are settled, you lean against the fence, the wood digging into your back, and look at the sky. The first spurs appear, pale and flickering. Somewhere, you hear laughter from the big house, music drifting over the fields, sweet and distant and utterly meaningless. You listen for a while, then turn away. That world is not yours. You wash your hands in the trough or wipe them on your trousers, scraping away the worst of the filth, but never really getting clean. There is still work to do, always. But the herd is home. The day's reckoning is nearly over, and you have survived once again by effort or luck or stubborn habit. You push the last gate closed and walk toward the cabins, feeling every step in your bones, the ghosts of sun and mud and fear trailing behind you. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, and the day after that. But tonight, for a few moments, you let yourself feel the smallest spark of relief. The herd is in, and so are you. There are days when you do everything right. Every cow is accounted for, every fence patched, every order obeyed, and still it does not matter. And then there are the days when something goes wrong. A calf limps through the gate, a board in the pen is split, or the count is off by one, and it is you who will pay the price. You can feel the tension in the air before the trouble even starts, a kind of heaviness that gathers at your neck and shoulders, tightening like a noose. The overseer is waiting by the pen as you bring the last of the herd in. He is not shouting this time. He does not have to. His silence is sharp, precise, more dangerous than any raised voice. He gestures, short and quick, and you know without asking that you are to come forward. The others avoid your eyes, busying themselves with chores, pretending not to see. No one can afford to attract notice now. He asks the questions. Where were you when the bull slipped the fence? Why is the old cow limping? Did you not hear the dogs barking last night? His words are accusations, not inquiries. You try to answer, voice low and careful, but he is not listening. He already knows who is to blame. You flinch at the first blow, though you tell yourself you will not. The stick he uses is the same one you use to herd cattle, but it feels heavier in his hand, sharper, more deliberate. The pain is not surprising. By now, it is almost familiar. The sharp crack across your back, the sting along your ribs, the ache that blossoms in your thigh and settles in your bones. You do not cry out. There is nothing to gain in giving him that satisfaction. It is a performance in its way, for everyone's benefit and no one's. The other shepherds keep their heads down, but you know they are listening. The cattle crowd at the edge of the pen, their eyes wide and blank, indifferent witnesses to human cruelty. You focus on the rhythm of the blows, the slow, dull heat spreading across your skin, the taste of blood where you bite your cheek to keep from making a sound. Sometimes the beating is quick, almost routine, a few strikes to prove a point, a warning more than a punishment. Other times it is drawn out, each blow a lesson, each pause a chance for the overseer to remind you again and again how little you matter. To Betite, he seems almost bored, lecturing as he swings, telling you how lucky you are to have work, how easily you could be replaced, how it is only his mercy that keeps you from something worse. When he finally stops, your body is humming with pain, but you stay on your feet. You have learned not to collapse, not to offer any more weakness than he can take for himself. He gives you a last shove, spits on the ground, and turns away. It is finished, for now you move stiffly, gathering what is left of your dignity and your strength. You do not look at the others as you limp away. Later, someone might offer you a scrap of cloth, a whispered word, but not now. To do so is to risk sharing your fate. Solidarity is a luxury paid for in bruises. You walk toward the cabin, every step a jolt. The pain settles in familiar places, joining the aches and scars of beatings past. It is not just your body that hurts, it is your pride, your hope, the small part of you that remembers what it felt like to be a whole person, not just a name on a list, a body to be struck and counted. You have seen others fare worse, those who cannot walk after, those who do not get back up. Some are left in the mud, ignored until nightfall. You have helped to carry them to the cabin, laid them on thin mats, watched as they shivered and whimpered, fevered and broken, sometimes never rising again. The beatings are meant to teach, but what you learn is mostly fear. Fear of standing out, fear of being seen, fear of the day when it is your turn and you cannot rise. You clean yourself as best you can, using water from a bucket, wincing as it touches your wounds. The pain is sharp, but at least it is clean, honest pain, pain that belongs to you, not to the overseer. You tie a strip of cloth around the worst of it and lie back, staring at the ceiling. Your body throbs in time with your heartbeat. You know sleep will be hard to find tonight, every movement a reminder of the lesson given. The overseer's words echo in your mind. How lucky you are, how you should be grateful. You turn the words over and over, trying to find the sense in them. But you know the truth. You are not lucky. You are simply still here, still able to work, still able to take the beating and return for more. In this place, that is all the luck you can expect. Tomorrow, you will rise again, bruised and stiff, and herd the cattle out to pasture as if nothing happened. The overseer will watch, waiting for the next mistake, and you will do your best to avoid notice, to blend into the routine of endless days. But tonight, you allow yourself to feel the pain, to remember that you are human, if only in secret, if only for a moment. Just when you think the day cannot possibly hold anything worse, you are proven wrong. There is always more work, always a job waiting that seems designed to remind you how low a person can be brought. Cleaning the pens is one of those jobs, a task so foul and endless that even the cattle seem to pity you as you begin. The pens are never truly clean. Each day, more filth accumulates, layers of dung, clumps of mud, straw trampled into a foul, sour smelling paste. The walls are caked with grime, the troughs slimy with the residue of old feed and spit. If you are unlucky, a calf has been sick and the mess is watery, stinging your skin and soaking through your shoes before you can even start. It is a job done with simple tools: a battered shovel with a bent blade, a pitchfork missing half its tines, and a wheelbarrow with a wheel that always threatens to come loose at the worst moment. You start at the far end, where the shadows are thickest and the air is so heavy it feels like a second skin. The cattle have already been moved aside, watching you with their slow, placid eyes, tails swishing in the fading light. They seem almost grateful for the relief, stepping gingerly to avoid your work, offering a low grunt or a brief nudge as if to say, "Good luck with that." You do not blame them. If you could walk away from this, you would too. With every shovel full, you curse the weight, the stink, the way your muscles protest with every motion. Your back throbs from the earlier beating, each twist sending a hot jolt of pain through your ribs and spine. Your hands, already raw from the day's labor, blister anew around the splintered handle. The filth is sticky and thick, clinging to the blade, forcing you to knock it free every few minutes. Flies swarm around you, eager for the feast, landing on your face and crawling in your ears. You swat at them out of habit, knowing it is useless. Sometimes you find more than manure in the straw. Odd treasures surface: a lost nail, a rusted buckle, a bit of chewed rope, the bones of a mouse who made the mistake of seeking shelter here. You pocket the nail, turn the buckle in your fingers, toss the bones aside. Each object is a small distraction, a brief moment where you can pretend you are searching for something valuable, not just moving waste from one place to another. The smell is overwhelming, a physical thing that seems to seep into your skin, your hair, your very breath. No matter how hard you scrub later, it will linger, a sour, earthy odor that clings to you long after you have left the pens behind. You wonder sometimes if you will ever be clean again, if there is enough soap in the world to wash away this day, this work, this life. You make a game of the labor, counting the shovel loads, measuring your progress by the shrinking pile of dung and the growing mound outside the fence. If you work quickly, you might finish before full darkness sets in. If you work slowly, the overseer will notice, and there is always the threat of more punishment. The trick is to find the right pace, not so fast that you collapse, not so slow that you draw attention. You learn to live in the space between. Others sometimes join you, silent and stoic, sharing the burden without words. You pass the shovel back and forth, a silent relay of exhaustion. There is no talk, nothing needs to be said. The work is the same for everyone, dirty, thankless, unavoidable. Occasionally, a quiet joke passes between you, a muttered curse, a memory of someone who managed to avoid this job for a day or two. Laughter is rare, and when it comes, it is bitter and brief, dying quickly in the humid, stinking air. When the wheelbarrow is full, you push it outside the pen, muscles straining, legs trembling with effort. The wheel sticks in the mud, tilts sideways, nearly spills its load. You curse again, shove it upright, and dump the contents in the heap behind the shed, a mountain of filth that seems to grow faster than you can ever hope to reduce it. There are days when you wonder if the pile will eventually swallow the whole plantation, burying everything in the waste that no one wants to see. You return to the pen, starting again, back and forth until the ground inside is as clean as it ever gets, a patchwork of mud, straw, and the faint promise of a fresh start that will last until the morning. You wipe your hands on your pants, smear a bit of filth across your cheek, and look at your work with weary satisfaction. It is done for now. The overseer rarely checks this part of your labor, but you know he will notice if you miss a spot. He has a talent for finding fault, for reminding you that even your best is never enough. So you double back, smooth the straw, scrape the last stubborn clumps from the corners, making sure there is nothing left for him to use against you. By the time you finish, darkness has fallen. You stagger toward the water barrel, splashing the worst of the filth from your arms, rubbing your hands together until the skin is raw and pink. It does not help much. The smell lingers, the stains remain, but you are too tired to care. You look at the pen one last time, the cattle settling in for the night, the world wrapped in silence except for their slow, steady breathing. You are filthy, sore, hungry, and so tired you can barely stand. But the job is done, and for a moment, that is enough. You walk back to the cabin, leaving the day's filth behind, knowing that tomorrow it will all begin again. At the end of the day, after the cattle are penned, the manure is shoveled, and the overseer has made his final rounds, you are left with the only thing in this world that truly belongs to you, your own battered body. You trudge back to the cabin, every step an inventory of aches. You feel each bruise, each scrape, every sting left by the overseer's stick, every cut from the splintered fence, every bite from the day's army of insects. The cabin is dim, shadows thick in the corners, the air heavy with the scent of sweat, old wood, and too many bodies packed too close. There are a few voices murmuring in the dark, but mostly silence. Privacy is a myth here. Your pain, your hunger, your exhaustion are never just your own, but for a brief spell, you can pretend otherwise. You sit on the rough edge of your cot, the blanket nothing more than a worn scrap. In the flickering light of a smuggled candle stub, you begin the nightly ritual of examining the damage. It starts with your hands, cracked and swollen, knuckles split, dirt ground so deep into the skin you are no longer certain where earth ends and flesh begins. You turn your palms up, flex your fingers, check for anything new. Another sliver, another raw patch, a nail bent backward from catching the wheelbarrow at just the wrong moment. Then your arms. The sleeves of your shirt roll up stiffly, sticking to your skin where the blisters from the sun and the beating have started to break. You touch each bruise, cataloging them with a grim, ironic pride. Some are already fading to green and yellow, others are fresh, purple and angry, swelling under your touch. The worst are the long, raised welts that run across your ribs, souvenirs from the overseer's stick, still hot and tender, throbbing in time with your pulse. You check your legs, feet sore and swollen from a day of walking, running, squatting in the mud. There is a gash on your shin where you barked it on a loose board, and a swollen bite on your ankle, already itching and turning red. You wiggle your toes, half amused that you can still feel all of them, though your shoes, such as they are, have rubbed raw patches on both heels. You hope for no infection, knowing there is nothing to treat it with if there is. Water and hope, those are your medicines. Your back is harder to examine, but you twist and turn, trying to see what you can. The muscles feel like knotted ropes, every movement a reminder of the day's labors. You run your fingers over the welts and bumps, flinching at the worst of it. You cannot see the worst spots, but you know they are there. Pain has a way of making itself known even in the dark. For the worst wounds, you reach for your collection of remedies. A rag torn from an old shirt, a dab of lard or bacon grease if you are lucky, a little water from the bucket, maybe a whisper of salt to keep the infection at bay. You press the cloth to your side, biting your lip against the sting, and try not to think about how many times you have done this. Some of the older ones never really heal, just fade into the tapestry of scars you carry, a map of everywhere you have been hurt and survived. You listen to the others around you, hearing the same ritual played out in whispers and sighs. Someone hissing as they pull a thorn from their hand, another muttering as she rubs at a twisted ankle, a cough that sounds too deep, too wet, too close to something worse than a simple cold. You know what sickness means here: missed work, less food, and the attention of the overseer, who has little patience for those who cannot keep pace. There are those who will not look at their wounds, who pretend not to feel the pain, as if ignoring it might make it vanish. You envy them sometimes, their stubbornness or their denial, but you have learned that to ignore a wound is to invite infection, to tempt fate, to risk something festering that cannot be fixed. So you clean, you bandage, you press, you wait. Tomorrow you will hurt in all the same places, and likely in a few new ones. It is a certainty as reliable as the sunrise. In the quiet, you sometimes wonder at the resilience of your own skin, your own bones. How many times can a body break and knit itself together again? How many times can you bend before you simply snap? You have heard stories, old ones, about men and women who bore so many scars they could not feel the stick any longer, who became numb to everything but hunger and cold. You do not want to be like them. You cling to your pain in a strange way as proof that you are still alive, still yourself, still capable of noticing that something is wrong and wishing it were otherwise. Pain is a constant companion, but it is also a reminder. You are still here, still fighting, still refusing, quietly, doggedly, to be worn all the way down. When the wounds are cleaned and wrapped as best as you can manage, you lie back, arms folded, staring up at the cracked boards of the ceiling. You wait for sleep to come, knowing it will not bring rest. Your body throbs, your mind drifts. You listen to the soft sounds of others tending their own hurts, a silent chorus of survival. You close your eyes, and for one brief moment, you let yourself forget about tomorrow. When the day finally releases you, when even the cattle have quieted and the overseer's footsteps have faded into memory, you find yourself lulled with the silence of evening. It is not peace that fills the cabins at night. Peace is something you might remember from another life or invent out of desperation. What you have now is the absence of noise, the lull after labor, the heavy, aching hush that settles in the darkness between one misery and the next. Some nights, the silence is broken by prayer, not the loud, proud prayers of the church or the celebrations in the big house, but quiet, secret, desperate things, whispered under breath or hummed low, so no one else can hear. You hear them, though, the muttered thanks for surviving another day, the pleas for strength or mercy, the names of loved ones lost or far away. There is a rhythm to these prayers, as steady as the work that filled the daylight hours, petitions rising and falling like the tide, each word an anchor or a lifeline. You see it in the faces around you. Some bow their heads, hands knotted together, lips moving in the candlelight. Others close their eyes, rocking slightly, swaying with the weight of hope or exhaustion. You recognize the old songs, the fragments of hymns carried from one plantation to another, patched and changed with every telling. Sometimes the words dissolve into humming, sometimes into nothing more than a sigh. You have learned to find comfort in the sound, even if you do not always join in. But you also know the other kind of evening, the one where prayer feels pointless, where the day's pain has worn you too thin for hope. On those nights, you do not pray, you do not hum, you just lie there, eyes open, staring into the dark, feeling as empty as the field after the cattle have moved on. You listen to the sounds of others settling in, the soft groan of a cot, the scrape of bare feet on the floor, the wheeze of breath from someone sleeping too hard or not sleeping at all. You let the emptiness fill you, pressing out whatever scraps of longing or faith you have left. It is a strange comfort, this emptiness. You tell yourself it is better than false hope, better than dreams that go nowhere, better than prayers that are never answered. You wrap it around yourself like a second skin, thicker than your blanket, heavier than the bruises on your body. You breathe it in, hold it tight, make yourself small inside it. The world cannot disappoint you if you expect nothing. The overseer cannot take away what you do not have. Some nights you drift between the two, part of you clinging to prayer, part of you sinking into emptiness. You remember old words, old stories, bits of wisdom handed down from someone's grandmother, someone's uncle, someone who once had hope and tried to pass it on. Every day above ground is a victory. The darkest night gives birth to morning. You repeat them, not because you believe, but because they are the only things that belong to you. You notice how some people pray for escape, others for forgiveness, a few for the strength to simply keep going. Sometimes a child's voice rises up in the darkness, simple and clear. Let mama come back. Let me have shoes. Let it rain so we don't have to work the field tomorrow. The prayers of children are sharper, somehow, cutting through the numbness of the groan. If you listen closely, you hear another kind of prayer, a kind that sounds like planning, whispers about rivers and stars, about the shape of the woods and the timing of the overseer's rounds. These prayers are dangerous, and you know better than to listen too hard. Hope, when spoken aloud, can become a noose. You turn your face to the wall, focus on your own breath, the slow rise and fall of your chest, the stubborn pulse that means you are still here, despite it all. Eventually, sleep comes, or it does not. Either way, you lie in the dark, feeling the aches and scrapes of the day, the slow burn of hunger, the quiet company of others beside you. Whether you pray or stay silent, whether you hope or surrender, it does not change what tomorrow will bring. But for now, you exist in this space between pain and promise, holding your emptiness or your prayer like a secret. And in that secret, maybe, just maybe, is the smallest trace of freedom, a freedom that no overseer can touch, that no hunger can eat away, that no beating can erase. It is yours for a moment in the hush of the evening as the day finally lets you go. You might imagine that night, after all the shouting and sweat and dust, would finally offer relief. Darkness falls like a heavy curtain, the air thick with the scent of earth, cooling after the day's sun, and for a few precious minutes it almost seems possible that rest is within reach. But rest is a fragile thing here, as easily broken as a dry twig. Just when you think you have found a sliver of peace, The night finds new ways to remind you that your world is not your own. The alarms begin with a sound, a dog barking, frantic and sharp, a sudden shout from one of the cabins, the crack of a branch out in the pasture, amplified by the emptiness of night. Everyone stiffens, breath held, hearts beating in their throats. You know the difference between the usual noises, someone turning in their sleep, a board creaking, the far off hoot of an owl, and the ones that spell trouble. Some nights it is nothing more than a sick cow in the pen, thrashing and bellowing, waking half the camp with its panic. You are roused from your cot by the overseer's curses, stumbling into the yard with a handful of others, sleep stinging your eyes, limbs heavy as lead. You herd the animal into a corner, murmuring soft, senseless words, hoping it will calm. If it dies, you will be blamed for not tending it sooner. If it lives, you will still be blamed for letting it get sick in the first place. The logic is flawless and cruel. Other times, the alarm is more dangerous, a rumor of escape, a figure glimpsed in the moonlight, a shadow moving toward the edge of the property, a section of fence bent just enough to let a desperate body slip through. The overseer's voice is a whip in the darkness, calling names, demanding answers. Dogs are loosed, their baying echoing through the fields. You are dragged from your cot, made to line up in the yard, cold sweat prickling along your spine as you wait to be counted, questioned, accused. You try not to look at anyone else. Guilt is a contagious thing, and suspicion sticks like mud. You keep your eyes on your feet, hands at your sides, answering every question with no, sir, and I do not know, sir, and yes, sir, even if you have seen something, even if you have dreamed of running yourself. You know better than to offer anything that might be mistaken for hope. Sometimes the alarms are closer to home. Someone falls sick in the night, coughing that will not stop, a fever burning through the darkness, a child whimpering for water. You hear the quiet shuffling as neighbors try to help, passing a cup or a rag, murmuring words of comfort that are too soft to do any good. The overseer hates these disruptions most of all. Sickness means lost labor, and lost labor means punishment for someone, anyone, whoever is easiest to blame. There are darker alarms, the crackle of fire in the distance, the sharp metallic ring of a bell struck hard and fast. On those nights, you feel a cold knot in your stomach, the memory of stories told in whispers, cabins burned to the ground, lives lost in the confusion and fury of a punishment meant as a warning. Even the cattle sense it, restless and agitated, pressing against the fence as if seeking an escape you know does not exist. And there are the alarms that never make a sound. The sudden absence of someone in the morning, a bed left empty, a pair of shoes missing from under a cot. You learn not to ask questions, not to wonder aloud. Disappearances are like wounds that never heal. You grow used to them the way you grow used to hunger and pain, until one day it is your own absence that others do not mention. No matter the cause, every nighttime alarm ends the same way. You return to your bed, heartbeat still racing, fear settling deeper into your bones. The air feels colder, the dark heavier, the chance of rest even more remote. You close your eyes and try to will yourself back to sleep, but sleep is a tricky thing, easy to lose and hard to recover. You lie awake, listening to the slow breaths and muffled sobs of those around you, waiting for the next sound, the next summons, the next crisis. You do not pray for peace. You know better by now. Instead, you pray simply to make it through the night, to wake up at dawn with your name still on your lips, your body still in one piece, your hope, tattered and thin as it is, still holding on for one more day. Tomorrow, the alarms will be forgotten, buried beneath fresh orders, new wounds, more work. The day will erase the terrors of the night, but only until darkness falls again and the cycle repeats. Out here, sleep is just another thing you learn to do without. At last, the night grows quiet again, or as quiet as it ever gets. The alarms fade, the shouts recede, the cattle settle down, and in the cramped darkness of the cabin, a kind of uneasy stillness returns. You roll onto your side on the narrow cot, feeling every bruise and sore spot protest, and try to remember what it felt like to fall asleep without fear. You do not succeed, but you try anyway. Sleep comes in snatches, fitful, shallow, more a series of blackouts than true rest. Each time your mind begins to drift, a noise snaps you back. Someone coughing in the next bunk, a baby whimpering, a mouse rustling in the straw, the wind rattling the walls as if the night itself wants to come inside and join the misery. Sometimes you dream, but the dreams are never kind. You find yourself back in the fields, driving cattle that multiply no matter how fast you count, mending fences that collapse behind you, running from a faceless overseer who is everywhere at once. You wake with your heart pounding, sweat dampening your shirt despite the cold. The few hours you get are never enough. The thin blanket is hardly a comfort, but you pull it up to your chin and curl into yourself, making your body as small as you can, as if you could hide from the next day. Some nights, the pain from your wounds makes it impossible to sleep at all. You lie awake, staring into the dark, counting your breaths, wishing for dawn and dreading it at the same time. Before you know it, morning is creeping in, gray, cold, inevitable. The first sounds are soft, a groan as someone sits up, the scrape of a bowl on the floor, the shuffle of bare feet searching for shoes. Then come the louder ones, the overseer's voice, barking the same commands as yesterday, as every day, the clang of the breakfast bell, the dogs barking, eager for their turn at the day's work. The line forms before the cookhouse, and you join it, hungry already, the night's rest, such as it was, doing little to blunt your exhaustion. You splash a little water on your face, wincing as the cold hits your skin, and run a hand through your tangled hair. The mirror, such as it is a piece of polished tin nailed to the wall, cloudy and warped. You catch a glimpse of yourself, eyes rimmed with red, cheeks hollow, lips cracked. The person looking back at you is someone you recognize only from repetition, not from any memory of who you used to be. You pull on your shoes, still wet from the evening's labor, still torn at the toes, and tie them as best you can. The same shirt, the same coat, the same battered hat. You check your pouch, a little meal, maybe a scrap of bread if you are lucky. Tools in hand, stick at your side, you step out into the morning that is already pressing down, heavy with chores and orders, and the certainty that nothing will change. The world outside is gray and damp, the ground still soft with last night's dew. You see the other shepherds, faces as tired as yours, moving like ghosts through the mist. There is no talk, only the slow, resigned march toward another day. The cattle wait at the fence, steaming in the chill air, their eyes as blank and patient as ever. You wonder, as you do every morning, if they feel the weight of the days, or if the repetition dulls even the sharpest misery. The overseer is there, stick in hand, ready to remind you that yesterday's effort means nothing now. His voice is already finding fault, already promising trouble if the smallest thing goes wrong. You listen without hearing, knowing every word by heart. And so it begins again. The herd is driven out, the same ruts and the same muddy path, the same tally of heads, the same calculations running through your mind. How many cows? How many hours? How many chances for disaster? The sun, when it rises, brings no warmth, only the relentless clarity of another day with nothing promised but survival. There is a comfort, twisted though it may be, in the sameness. You know every step, every sound, every danger and disappointment that waits for you. You know what hurts and what heals, what you can fix and what you must simply endure. The hope you carry is small and battered, as thin as your blanket, but it persists, an ember that refuses to go out, no matter how many nights threaten to smother it. You move forward, one foot after another, herding cattle, mending fences, fighting off insects and fear and fatigue. You keep going because there is no other choice, because each new day is proof that you have not yet been broken completely. You tell yourself that this is enough, at least for now. And as the sun climbs higher, you begin the day's long, familiar struggle all over again. This is your world, a brief sleep, a bitter waking, and the endless, grinding return to work. You count the hours by the movement of the shadows, the aches in your bones, the distance from one meal to the next. You endure because endurance is all that remains, and somewhere in the act of enduring, you claim a tiny piece of yourself that no overseer, no hunger, no night alarm can ever truly take away. And so, with the taste of last night's emptiness still on your tongue, and the first commands of the new day ringing in your ears, you step once more into the pasture, into the mud, into the story that never ends.